story we're going to hear this morning takes place not that long ago. There once were two friends whose names were Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein. Now, Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein had known each other since they were little boys who lived in the old country of Europe together. Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein grew up in the very same village. They attended the very same school, and they spent all of their boyhood afternoons there in their village in Eastern Europe playing together in the fields. And Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein together both had a dream that someday, when they were a little bit older, the two of them might together save up enough money to board a steamship, travel across the Atlantic Ocean, leaving their village in Eastern Europe behind, come through New York Harbor, sail past the Statue of Liberty, through the gates of Ellis Island, and walk into New York City, and themselves eventually become Americans in pursuit of the American dream. And Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein imagined it in their minds that New York was a city where everybody was a millionaire, and that the streets in New York must have been paved with bricks of gold. So luxurious was the life in New York that even the streets were made of gold bricks. And Morris and Isaac promised each other that someday they would have enough money to go there and see the streets that were paved with gold and themselves achieve the American dream. And it came to pass that over time, Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein had saved up enough money to purchase those very steamship tickets, and they sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, leaving their little village in Eastern Europe behind. They sailed into New York Harbor, past the Statue of Liberty, through the gates of Ellis Island, and walked out into the United States. And a little bit to their disappointment, they found the streets were not quite paved with gold bricks. They were paved with normal cobblestones, but nevertheless, Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein were so happy to be here. And the two of them quickly set up shop, trying to achieve the American dream. Now, in those days, lots of Eastern European Jewish immigrants lived on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I know that my great-grandparents did. Maybe some of you also have ancestors who lived there as well. And in those days, the Jews on the Lower East Side of Manhattan had all across the streets many little push carts where traveling peddlers would sell their wares. There was one push cart that was filled with fruits and veggies, and another peddler who pushed a push cart that was full of bagels, rolls, and pretzels. Another push cart that was filled with clanging pots and pans and all of the kitchen appliances you could need. Another push cart that was filled with all kinds of hats that you might wear on a Sunday outing. All over the Lower East Side, push carts of every single kind. And Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein decided to get into the push cart business. So Morris Goldberg bought himself a push cart and filled it up high with delicious red apples. He was known for selling the crunchiest, the sweetest, the most delicious red apples on the whole Lower East Side from his push cart. That's what Morris sold. Isaac Silverstein, for his part, he became a pickle man. Isaac Silverstein sold crunchy, sour, salty, dill, crisp pickles from his pushcart on the Lower East Side, a perfect, inexpensive, and kind of smelly snack on a hot New York day. Inexpensive but delicious. And the two of them started to earn a little bit of money. Morris Goldberg selling his red delicious apples, Isaac Silverstein selling his crunchy, salty pickles. And slowly, over time, business started to boom, and Morris Goldberg and Isaac Silverstein were able to trade in their push carts, sell them back to the person they bought them from, and open up a storefront of their very own. They no longer needed to sell their wares from little carts. They opened up little shops right there on the corner of Broome Street and Allen Street on the Lower East Side. Goldberg's apples, Silverstein's pickles. And in fact, they were so pleased with their success, so much that they had achieved the American dream, that they decided to do a very American thing. They decided that each of them would change their name. Goldberg became just Gold, and Silverstein became just Silver. And each of them hung out a sign, Gold's New York apples and Silver's famous pickles. The two of them right there on the corner of Broome Street and Allen Street, selling apples and selling pickles, the most popular apple and pickle vendor in all of New York City. And they again made to themselves a promise that day, just like they had promised each other when they were boys that they would someday travel across the ocean and go to New York. Now that they had opened up their storefronts and changed their names, they made a promise that they would always share with each other the business ideas that would help them to get ahead. They would help one another, apples and pickles, to sell all the wares that they could. And here in America, they found that their names were very fitting. After all, they came here in search of gold and silver, and now they had themselves become gold and silver. I gotta catch my breath. And business was going great. Until one morning, Isaac Silver showed up early there to the corner of Broome Street and Allen Street and went to go open his pickle shop when he saw that, unusually so, there was already, in the very early morning hours of the day, a long line going out from Gold's Apples all the way around the corner. And Isaac Silver thought to himself, what's going on here that the Apple store already has so many customers so early in the day? And so Isaac went to go check it out. He tried to look in the window to look for his friend Morris Gold, but he couldn't find Morris anywhere inside the shop. And so he went and he looked on the line to talk to one of the customers who was waiting there already. And he saw someone who he was used to seeing at his shop. He saw a lady named Mrs. Sarah Finkelstein. He said, Sarah, it's so nice to see you. Usually you'd be waiting in line to buy a pickle from my store, but I see that you're here in this early morning line waiting outside of Gold's New York Apples. What's going on? Why is there this long line here? And Miss Sarah Finkelstein looked at Isaac and she said, didn't you see the sign? And Isaac looked up over his head, and next to the sign where it said Gold's Apples, it now said, special, 1 week only, golden apples. And Isaac thought to himself, golden apples? How on earth is Gold going to sell golden apples? And how are all these people going to be able to afford buying golden apples? And Sarah said, I don't know about you, I'm waiting in this line. I want to make sure I get one of these golden apples. And Isaac went to go try and find his friend Morris, and he knocked on the window and he couldn't find Morris anywhere. And he left feeling a little bit hurt. First, his friend had taken his customer, Sarah Finkelstein, and then he had this business secret, golden apples. And hadn't they promised each other that they would always share their business ideas with one another? Isaac left that day feeling a little bit hurt. He went home trying to think about his relationship with Morris, and that night he fell asleep and he had a dream. In his dream, little Isaac and little Morris were playing together in the fields in the old country in their village. They were running around through an apple orchard, and as they were running around, suddenly, right out of a tree, fell and hit Isaac on the head a little yellow apple. And Isaac awoke with a start and, strangely, with a bump on his head. And he said, oh, of course, I understand. Morris is selling golden apples, but in this country, those little yellow apples, they have a funny name, don't they? Those little yellow apples are called Golden Delicious. Of course, he's hung out a sign that says golden apples in order to get customers to come through the door thinking that they're going to get an apple made of solid gold, when in fact all that they're going to find is a little yellow apple. Why, Morris, you old sly dog, what a great marketing ploy. I'm going to go there in the morning and I'm going to congratulate him on his great idea. And Isaac went back to sleep, again strangely, with a bump on his head. The next morning, he woke up, and on his way down to the shops there on the corner of Broome Street and Allen Street, he stopped at one of the normal push carts and bought himself a little yellow Golden Delicious apple and brought it right over to the line. When he got there, the line this day was even longer than it had been the day before. And again, he saw Miss Sarah Finkelstein standing in the line. And he went over to her and he said, Sarah, you're back so soon. And she said, oh yes, this storefront is the place to be. And Isaac said, well, haven't you already learned the trick? And Sarah said, the trick? What are you talking about? And Isaac said, I know that the sign says golden apples, but you must know, because you were here yesterday, that when you get inside, you're not going to get an apple that's made of gold. You're going to get a little yellow, golden, delicious apple. And Sarah looked at him and she said, wow, Isaac, you are so silly. He's not selling golden, delicious apples in there. You think I would come back a second day in a row just to get a little yellow apple, which I could buy on any street corner around here? Of course, that's not what's going on here. You are so silly, Isaac. And Isaac left feeling a little sad and a little hurt. Now, not only that his friend had taken his customer, now, not only that he hadn't shared the business idea with him, but now feeling like he couldn't figure out what the mystery of the golden apple was. And again, he tried to find his friend Morris. He looked through the window of the shop, but between all the crowds that had been assembling with the long lines, he couldn't find Morris Gold anywhere. And Isaac again left that day feeling sad and a little hurt. That night, he again slept, and again, he had a dream. And in his dream, this time, Isaac and Morris weren't playing as they had been in the fields and the orchard. In his dream this night, they were walking through those magnificent gates of Ellis Island, coming into New York City. And in his dream, again, he saw streets that were paved with gold bricks. And he and Morris shouted for joy, seeing the streets of New York paved with gold bricks. And as they walked through the gates of Ellis Island in his dream, and they got closer to the bricks that were paved of gold, they realized, as they looked down, that the bricks were in fact not made of gold, but rather in his dream, the bricks were in fact made of little golden apples. They looked like cobblestones, but they were actually little golden apples. And in his dream, Isaac saw Morris picking up all of these golden apples from the streets of New York City and stuffing them into his bag and taking them all for himself. And Isaac was left all alone with nothing for himself. He woke up in a panic with the vision of the golden apples still in his head. And he thought, I don't know what's going on down there, but I know that Morris is up to something. He's got something going on with those golden apples that he says is on his sign. And he stormed down to the shop in order to give his friend a piece of his mind. He had broken his promise. He had hurt their friendship. And he went straight down to the corner of Broome and Allen to try and find his old buddy Morris. When he turned the corner, he expected to see, again, a long line of customers waiting outside the door to find one of Gold's famous golden apples. But instead of a long line of customers, Isaac saw only that morning his good old buddy Morris. And Morris was standing there waiting for him, and Morris said, "It's you, Isaac. I've been looking for you for days." And Isaac said, "You've been looking for me for days. I've been looking for you. I've been trying to find you. Ever since you hung out that sign about the golden apples, I haven't been able to reach you. You've hurt my feelings. You've taken my customers. You didn't share your business ideas with you, and I couldn't get in touch with you. What is going on with the golden apples?" And Morris said, "Well, I've been wanting to show you all this time." And Morris reached into his box, and Morris pulled out a little silver apple. A little silver apple. And Isaac Silver said, "What on earth is going on? You're advertising golden apples, and instead of selling gold ones, you're selling silver apples? Don't you know that you're gold, Morris Gold, and I am Isaac Silver? Now you've not only stolen my customers, you've even stolen my name, advertising it as golden apples, but in fact selling them made of silver." And Morris said, No. The golden apples, my friend, are not what you think." And with that, he lifted the lid off of the silver apple, and inside, he dipped a little piece of apple, and out came, and out came a glistening, shiny, sticky, sweet, honey-coated golden apple. And my friends, Isaac Silver learned an important lesson that day. He learned that the things we should go after in our lives are not always the things that are shiny. We spend a lot of time trying to find gold and trying to find silver, when in fact the things that bring us the most fulfillment in life are not shiny at all. In fact, they're things that are sweet. And my friends, that is why we dip apples in honey on Rosh Hashanah, in order to help us have a sweet new year. And so Isaac looked at his friend Morris and he said, "I'm so sorry. I thought that you were tricking me, and really all you wanted to do was wish me a sweet Rosh Hashanah with an apple dipped in honey. But Morris, I still have a little bit of a problem. I want to be like you. I want to have a sweet year. I want to help improve my business by selling something that's sweet, but after all, I'm a pickle salesman. Pickles are sour, pickles are dill, pickles are briny, pickles are salty. What am I supposed to do with your business idea?" And Morris looked at Isaac and he said, "But Isaac, haven't you ever heard of a sweet pickle?" And from that day forward, the two of them remained best friends, as they always had been from childhood. A perfect pair, the two of them. As apples go with honey, as gold goes with silver. Shana Tova.